We're continuing our series through the book of Mark as we kind of come across this miracle. Now, many of you might have, even if you're not church people, like even if it's your first time here, which I know a lot of you guys, if it's first or you've been coming to church for a little bit, we love having you here. But there's a story that's fairly well known in the church of Jesus feeding 5,000 people, or actually 5,000, they only counted the guys back then, so it's 5,000 dudes that were there. So there's probably around 10, 15, maybe even 20,000 people. So he feeds all these people, but he does it with a very small amount of bread and a very small amount of fish. And when you're growing up, you kind of hear that story, but we teach it kind of in terms of, well, look how nice Jesus was. One time, he fed people food. That's it. That's our exegesis of that whole passage. Is Jesus fed people? You should feed people too. But that's not. When you dive into the historical context of what this story would have meant, you get a much fuller representation of what we're supposed to hold. And we've been seeing this ongoing theme in the book of Mark of Jesus kind of putting people in a position to either crown him or crucify him. Jesus is an offensive character. Like if the Jesus in your subconscious is like fluffy and Nerf ball and like always gentle all the time, then you've kind of missed who Jesus is. And this story, just like the other ones we've been talking about, is him pitting against these Old Testament heroic figures against who he is. He makes audacious claims, but you're not going to see them unless you read them through a Hebraic lens, where we're supposed to look at things through. So we got to jump back in time, and let's go back to being in his first century audience and listen to the story through that lens, and it's going to come alive for us. This common theme of Jesus kind of teasing out what people are here for is going to come more alive for us. It says this: the apostles gathered around Jesus and reported to him all they had done and taught. Then, because so many people were coming and going, they did not even have a chance to eat, he said to them, "Come with me by yourselves to a quiet place and get some rest." So they went away by themselves in a boat to a solitary place. But many who saw them leaving recognized them and ran on foot from all the towns and got there ahead of him. When Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd. Make sure in your Bible, circle that phrase, sheep without a shepherd, and then off in the margin put Psalm 23. So if you're familiar with Psalm 23, or you listen to Coolio on the regular, Coolio has a song that goes, "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I take a look at my life, I realize there's not life." You know what, Kim? Good for you for listening to rap music. Let's go team.
90s rap.
Yeah, so 90s rap. Nothing like it. Anyway, there's a very popular phrase we say at funerals a lot, and it's, "The Lord is my shepherd." This is what they said on the deck of the Titanic while I was singing. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Surely your goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. I left out some anointing stuff, whatever." Yeah, I want to get the gist of it. So Jesus is quoting this. He's going, they're like sheep without a shepherd. And in the Old Testament, he says, here's how a shepherd ought to treat sheep. When David says, "The Lord is my shepherd," here's how he treats sheep. And we're going to watch Jesus do the exact same thing. He taught them many things. By this time it was late in the day, so his disciples said to him, "This is a remote place," they said. "It's very late." Okay, so they're exhausted. Then they tell Jesus, "Send the people away so they can go to the surrounding countryside and villages and buy themselves something to eat." But Jesus answered them, "Why don't you give them something to eat?" So we've got 12 peasants, 12 disciples, who follow this itinerant rabbi around. They didn't really make money or anything. And you're going to feed 20,000 people. Now, maybe you've never been in a situation, maybe at ASB, something like that. Some of you guys at ASB. Maybe you know some of the math of feeding people. But by and large, you can kind of guarantee, if you're just doing bare bones, that people eat at about $2 per person per meal. Okay? In 11-12, when we do retreats, we try to get it around that so it can be less cost for everyone. So we kind of average out $2 per person per meal. Okay? So now, how much would it cost to feed 20,000 people? So we doubled it. $40,000. So these peasant Jews are like, "You want me to feed all these people?" Just picture like 20,000 people. Just think of like Lakers arena, the Staples Center, being most of the way full. All coming to hear this guy and going, hey, you should feed these people. Wait, where would you start? But we can't feed them. That's what he wanted them to get to. He didn't want them to start trying. He wanted them to go, we can't feed them all. And they go, that is their response. They said to him, that would take more than half a year's wages. Are we to go and spend that much on the bread and give it to them to eat? Jesus goes, look, I'm not worried about you going and getting stuff. I want you to just use whatever you have. So he says, how many loaves do you have? He asked them. Go and look. So they go ask, they find this kid, he's got like a lunchbox, and it's got 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish in it. So this is enough for a small boy to eat. And he goes, yeah, bring it to me. Then Jesus directed them to have all the people sit down in groups on the green grass. Okay? This is a tie back to what? What did he promise to do earlier? He said they're like what? These people are like sheep without a shepherd. Now what's he making the sheep do? Lie down on green grass. That's exactly what Psalm 23 said. I will make them to lie down in green grass. I'm going to restore their soul. I'll lead them in the paths of righteousness for my name's sake. So he's going back to what he promised to do. So he has them lie down in the green grass, and he breaks them up into groups of people. They sat down in groups of hundreds and fifties, taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, and looking up to heaven. So this is where in our American context, we would just keep reading right here. But let's say if I was done with the sermon right now, I said, hey guys, let's pray. What would you all do immediately? What would be your knee-jerk reaction? Right? Even if you're not a church person, if you don't go to church or you're not about church, whatever, you've even seen it, like, it's kind of trans-religious, right? Time to pray, and everyone, what do we all do? Why? It's a sign of reverence. Why do we bow to people? Like if you're before a king and you bow to her majesty, why do you do that? It's a sign of what? Good. Respect, reverence, awe. And in biblical literature, it is to show that I am not worthy to look up at you. So Jesus is going to pray for the meal, and everyone else, in good conscience, knowing that they are sinful, they are broken, they are not equal with God. Everyone else would do what when they pray? They would bow their head. What does Jesus do? He looks up. So you've got to hear it in their context. Here's a group of Jews listening to this guy pray, and he doesn't bow his head. In fact, he looks up in this show of, I'm equal. Jesus considers himself equal to God. So he's creating that tension even further. He's going, what are you going to do with me? Right? It's like a rubber band. He's just pulling it. It's like something's got to give. Either I'm God and you crown me as king, or I'm a liar and you got to crucify me. What are you going to do? Because by looking up, I'm telling you, I'm not like you. I'm not like anyone else. I am greater. And then he becomes more offensive. In order to understand how offensive he is, we have to go back to the Old Testament. And I'm going to tell you a quick story as we get there. There's a group called the Israelites. They were the Hebrews. They changed names throughout human history. But they're a group of people. They're living in this place called Canaan. And they've got a father named Abraham. Father Abraham had many sons, and many sons had Father Abraham. I'm one of them, and so are you, so praise the Lord. Then, down their line, there is a man whose name is Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons. His youngest at the time, before Reuben came along, was a man named Joseph. Joseph, his brothers hated him. His brothers sold him to slavery in Egypt. Now, when you think of Egypt, what are some natural assumptions we have of Egypt? When I say Egypt, what are some word pictures that come to your mind? Grace, when I say the word Egypt, where do you go?
Pyramid.
Pyramid, good. Genesis, what do you think of when I say Egypt? Kind of the same thing, like pyramids and that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Good. Angie, what do you think of? Hot. It's hot. So the climate is the first thing. Caroline, what comes to your mind when you say Egypt? What? Deserts. Good. What about the Egyptian Empire? What do you think when I say Egyptian Empire? Bree, what comes to your mind when I say Egyptian Empire? Is the Egyptian Empire powerful or weak? Powerful. Okay. When I say the word Pharaoh, what word pictures come into your head?
Moses.
Good. Okay, you get Moses being kind of the antithesis of that. Brent, describe to me a Pharaoh. What's Pharaoh look like?
I guess they would symbolically.
Good. Yeah, sure. Symbolically, what would they be?
They would carry a shepherd's staff to lead people.
Yep. Ornate with gold or peasant rags?
Gold.
Gold. Okay, so we've got these, the Pharaoh, in actually ancient hieroglyphics, consider themselves to be on equal pairing with God. Okay, they call themselves literally the morning and the evening star was Pharaoh. This was this language that said, that's why do they entomb them in pyramids? Because they believe they're burying a god to go into the afterlife and to lead in the afterlife, back with its ancestors. So, this was a Pharaoh. Now, here's the issue. When the story of Joseph, who is this peasant who gets sold into slavery, is playing out, Egypt is nothing. It's a podunk town. A bunch of peasants trying to get by. They're villagers, they're foragers, they're nothing. Joseph gets sold into slavery in Egypt when it was nothing. Joseph had an ability though. Joseph could interpret dreams. This story can be found in the book of Genesis 39. Joseph is a historical figure. We actually have record of him in Egypt, being a Hebrew. In fact, there's actually statues of him in Egypt with having red hair. Historically speaking, the Hebrew people had red hair. They were, or the Canaanites. The Canaanite literally means people who have red hair. Okay, so Joseph is kind of he's basically a ginger. Okay, Charlie, just like you. So, not that red, but more of like a dark red color to it. So we know that Joseph was there. Joseph claimed the ability to interpret dreams. But when he gets to Egypt, there's this girl who thinks he's cute, tries to sleep with him. Joseph goes, no, I'm not going to sleep with you. Turns out the woman that he rejects is a high-ranking official's wife. That woman goes to her husband, Potiphar, and says, this guy was hitting on me. Potiphar throws him in jail for 10 years. Sits in jail for 10 years. While he's in jail, there's another guy named the cupbearer. The cupbearer's job is to drink all the wine before the king. So in case the wine is poisoned, he dies. Okay? So you were expendable, basically. So the cupbearer's in jail because he did something wrong. And the cupbearer keeps having dreams, and Joseph goes, I'll interpret your dreams for you. So the cupbearer finally gets out of jail before Joseph does, and the Pharaoh has a dream. Pharaoh has a dream that there's like 7 skinny cows that eat fat cows. And so he keeps asking these officials, what does this mean? And they're like, we don't know. So he kills them. He kills the officials. They're all dead. And he's like, no one can tell me my dream. Well, the cupbearer remembers this guy from prison and goes, wait a minute, Pharaoh. I know a dude who can interpret your dream. So he puts Joseph on the spot. He goes, Joe, come here. Pharaoh has a dream. And Joseph's like, oh, shoot. Like, you get it right or you die. Tell him your dream. So Pharaoh goes, well, there's these cows and they're skinny. They're eating all fat cows. And then there's like these stalks of grain. The small ones are eating the larger ones. What is this all about? And Joseph, the power of God, is able to interpret their dream. His dream, and he says this. He goes, you're going to have 7 years of plenty. Everything's going to grow. There's going to be a lot of agriculture. There's going to be a lot of livestock. Everything's just going to be multitudinous and cornucopia. It's going to be great. Eat and drink your fill. But here's the issue. After 7 years of plenty, there's going to be 7 years of famine. No rain. All your livestock's going to die. Nothing's going to produce. Trees are going to wither up. There'll be no water. There'll be nothing. And so Pharaoh goes, wow, how do you know this? He goes, well, God told me. Well, what do? Joseph goes, okay, your instinct in years of plenty is to eat everything. Here's what I'm going to recommend. I want you to build something called a silo. I want you to build these 3 massive silos, which we have found today in archaeology. I want you to build these massive silos, and I want you to fill them with grain. So half the grain that we get, eat. We'll need it. The other half I want you to store it. He said, and when every other country is eating because they've got plenty, they're overindulging, kind of like the stock market in 2008, right? The housing market. When everyone else is overindulging, there's going to be a crash in the market and everyone's going to go broke. And so Joseph says, if you're the only country with food, people are going to have to pay everything to get food. So this is exactly what happens in human history. All these other podunk towns, from Goshen to the valley over in the Sahara to Egypt to Syria, all these places in the ancient Near East, they're all pretty equal and they're all in years of plenty. And Egypt goes, we're going to store half of our food. Then after 7 years, famine hits. And everyone hears that. Who has food? Egypt. So they all trek to Egypt, including a group of Canaanites who Joseph's brothers sold them into slavery, but now they're coming looking for food. And they're going, what do you want? And he's like, well, basically, give me your whole family. Give me all your wealth. So in archaeology, in human history, we see a movement of wealth being well spread out to all of a sudden going to Egypt. So your picture of Egypt is because of Joseph. Our modern day understanding of the superpower of Egypt is because during a time of famine, Egypt was the only place with food. And when you're the only place with food, you've created what? A monopoly. When you create a monopoly, what are you able to do? Charge whatever you want. And they did. And that began the overflow of expenditures for the Egyptian people. Now, they become so powerful that they look around and they go, after 3 generations, they go, what are these redheads doing here? Like, I don't know, they're on our land, they're not Egyptian, what should we do with them? And the Pharaoh, who didn't know Joseph's story, didn't know what the Israelites had done for them, didn't know that they had saved them and made them powerful, they go, let's just enslave them. They're smaller than us, there's less of them. So they grab all of them and they put them in slavery. Because they don't remember why they're here. They're living in the most fertile part of the land, in the Goshen Valley, and they're taking all their resources, and they said, well, instead of conquering them, let's just enslave them. So they bring them into slavery, and for 400 years they lived in slavery. Until a man named Moses comes along, like we were talking about, and Moses, through the power of God, sends 10 plagues and sets them free. They go out to the desert, but they've got no food now. So God, through Moses, who was like the Israelites' hero, Moses provides food called manna for them. It's this bread. It's bread without yeast. It's unleavened. And they're eating it every day. So Moses is able to multiply food from nothing to feed people. A few books later, in the book of Deuteronomy, a man named Elisha does this exact same thing. He's supposed to feed all these prophets, 100 of them, and he has just enough food to feed the very last one, even though they only had 1 loaf of bread. So when we get to the story of the New Testament, what's Jesus doing? Who is he comparing himself to? Who do they know in their history? If you're a Jew, your heroic action figures you play with week in and week out are Elijah, Moses, Joseph, Elisha. These are the pinnacles of everything. They are everything to you. They are the prophets. So Jesus walks in on the scene and goes, give me some bread. And everyone's like, no. And he's like, and he grabs it, and then he looks up to heaven. Did Moses look up to heaven when he prayed? No. Did Elijah when he prayed? No. What did they have that Jesus didn't have? Sin. They were broken, they were fallen, they weren't worthy. So Jesus goes, give me the bread, and everyone's like, no. Is he? Everyone leans in like, he goes, let's pray. He looks up and they go, no. You see, they know the prophecy. The prophecy that is told about in the book of Exodus, chapter 16, and Deuteronomy, chapter 18, is that one day there'll come a prophet who will feed everyone for all time. So what's Jesus doing? He's going, you guys get it? Do you get it? Psalm 23 says that there's going to be a shepherd that makes people lie down in green pastures. I want you all to lie down on the grass in groups. Give me some bread. And they're going, no. He looks to heaven and goes, Father. And they go, oh my gosh. Did people call Jesus or call God Father back then? How come? Why did people in the Old Testament call God Father? It's a hard question. But if you understand redemptive history at all, when are we given permission to call God Father? Romans 8 says we get adopted to sonship through the work of the cross. So we don't know him as Father until then. He's God. He's Redeemer. But it is through adoption and the work of the cross that we're able to call him Abba. That's what Romans 8 says. Father, Dad. The cross gives us that permission. That's what Hebrews 4 says. We are able to approach God's throne of grace with confidence because of the cross. And you've got this Jewish carpenter going, Father. Everyone would have gone, excuse me? You guys are related? Yeah, it's my dad. So here's this character who in the very next section, in the book of John, it tells us that he's going to give a sermon then. And he's going to say, behold, I am the bread of life, he says. So we get this word picture of bread, that if we physically need bread to sustain our bodies, and fish and the omega-3 fatty acids of fish to sustain our bodies, then Jesus says there's also a sustenance for our soul, something deeper that we need to inherit, we need to indulge in. And he said, I am that bread. I am what your soul's been yearning for. I am what you need. He says, I am the bread of life. Anyone who eats my body will never be hungry again. Is he talking about his physical body? No. He means if I live in you, if I reside in you. So, he blesses it, he looks up to heaven, he's going to appeal back to their heroes and go, so your hero Moses produced manna. How long was manna good for? Does anyone know the story? How long was manna good for before it rotted? One day. At the end of the day, all the manna on the ground became moldy and you couldn't eat it anymore. And the story of Elijah, when he's producing food, it was just enough for everyone to eat. Then what happens? Jesus comes in and he feeds them all, and then how does the story end? Here's what it says. Here's how he does it. Then he directed them and have all the people sit down in groups on the grass. So they sat down in groups of hundreds of 50, taking the 5 loaves and 2 fish, and looking up to heaven, he gave thanks and broke the loaves. Then he gave them to his disciples to distribute to the people. Here's another place where the first century Jewish audience would have gone, what? You see, when I went to Israel last time, I'm having dinner with a man named Ronan, and he's a Hasidic Jew. Doesn't believe in Jesus, but he believes in everything in the Old Testament. And he said, if you read Jesus through a Jewish lens, we're not impartial to Jesus. We think he's offensive. Jews today think Jesus was very offensive. But if you don't read it through Hebrew eyes, you're not going to get this. It says, he grabs the loaves of bread, and then who distributes the bread? What does it say there? Disciples. Who gives it to the disciples? Jesus. So I'm having dinner with a man named Ronan. You've met Ronan. Ronan. Hello. He leads some of the tours that we go through North Coast Church over in Israel. So we're eating at this place called the St. Peter's Fish Cafe or something like that. Did you have a fish when you were there? Did you eat it? What'd you think? It was gnarly. I thought it was gnarly. It's like the head was staring at you and stuff like that. Like they keep the head on the fish and you're like, no. So he asked me to pass the hummus. And he was testing me. So I grabbed the hummus and I handed it to him. Like this. I'm like, Alex, take the hummus. Okay, but he didn't. He just put his hand by his side. Do that. He said, here's the hummus. He looks at me and he goes, no. I was like, what? It's hummus. He goes, I know. Put it down. Well, you're trying to pass it. He goes, put it in front of me. So I put it down, and he picks it up and he goes, thank you. And I went, just take it from me. He goes, because you did not provide it. Man does not provide food for man. All food comes from God. So when you pass something around a Jewish dinner table, you set it down, they pick it up. If you walk into a place in Jerusalem and you say, here, I got you this, they would say, no, you didn't. You don't make food. God alone makes food. So what does Jesus do? He grabs the food, he breaks it, and then he does what? Here, take this. What's he saying now? Only God provides food. What is he saying right now? It's me. It's me. On the night in which Jesus was betrayed, he took bread after giving thanks when he broke it and gave it to his disciples, and he said, take and eat. What is he doing again? I provide. I'm the provider. So now the audience is stuck with this. This guy's looking up to heaven, he's claiming to be God, he's passing out bread, he claims to be... And if you ask Jesus, are you saying that you're as good as Moses? Are you saying that you're on par with Elijah? He would say, no. I would never make such a claim to be on par with Elijah. I am infinitely superlative to Elijah. I am forever surpassing Moses. Moses, his whole life was to point to me. I am the bread of life. In fact, Jesus is born in a town called Beit Lechem. Beit means the house of, and Lechem is a Hebrew word that means what? Bread. Bethlehem is the house of bread. He's born in the house of bread. He calls himself the bread of life, and then he's going to multiply bread, just like he did in the Old Testament, and here's how the story ends. He gave them to his disciples to distribute the people. He also divided the 2 fish among them all. They all ate and were satisfied. And the disciples picked up 12 basketfuls of broken pieces. So he doesn't run out. He doesn't fester. He picks up 12 baskets after everyone has eaten. So he said, if they multiplied food and it went bad, and they did just enough for everyone to eat, I am going to fulfill you, and I'm going to have 12 baskets left over. The number of men who had eaten was 5,000, it says. And look, I got like 90 seconds left. But here's what I want to leave you guys with today. Again, I want to continue the tension in the book of Mark. You guys see it building today? If we don't know the historical context, then that story is like, neat. But now do you get it? He goes in front of all these people and he says, king me or crucify me? I'll give you bread. In fact, today, did you go to Tabga when you were there? We know where this event took place in archaeology, and you can go there today, and there's a first century church called the Church of the Multiplication, and they just dug it up a few years ago, and on the church, there's a mosaic on the ground, and the mosaic on the ground is 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish, in the first century. So within 50 or 60 years after Jesus performed this miracle, they built a church there to honor the miracle that happened, and it's called the Church of Multiplication. So you can go there today and still see this first century mosaic on the ground of bread and fish, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. I don't care. I don't care about it. But this is what Jesus does over and over again in Mark. But if you don't read it through a Hebrew lens, he's not offensive. When you do read through that lens, he's saying, are you chasing something in this life that it's like cotton candy? You ever had cotton candy before? Has anyone ever not had cotton candy? Good. You've all had great childhoods.
I haven't had things like that.
That's fine. At some point in life. So, let me ask you this question. If I gave you just a never-ending supply of cotton candy, what would happen to you? You don't have to eat it, but that was your only source of food, what would happen to you? You would die. There's no nutritional value to it, right? I had my uncle one time, he went on a diet and he only ate cotton candy. You want to know why? Because it was light. So he's like, well, who's going to gain more weight? You eat a steak, or you eat chicken, which is supposed to be healthy, I'll eat cotton candy. I can't gain weight because it's just cotton. Look how fluffy it is. You can hold it, it's nothing. So his rationale was, meat weighs more than cotton. He had diabetes, but anyway. But that's the pitch that Jesus is trying to make to the people. He's going, where in your life are you just like eating cotton candy everywhere? And he goes, does it feel like it's not satisfying you? This is the call of Christianity, is are you willing to partake in the only thing that satisfies? And Jesus is saying, it's just me. That's what he says, I am the bread of your life. Now, you might be able to eat other things and get sustenance, but he says, but your soul craves something deeper than whatever you're giving it right now. The question is to us, are we chasing things that have no substance whatsoever? And I know how that feels. I know that process for us. It might be the number of followers we have. It might be how popular we are. It might be a relationship. It might be sexuality. It might be there's a lot of things that we can chase. And what Jesus is saying is there's a lot to chase in this world, but it's like having a room full of cotton candy. Someone who eats everything this world has to offer, finishes the room of cotton candy, and then learns a secret that you and I might not know right now. It didn't work. Where they found themselves at the end is not a place where they're healthier, but they are much less healthy. Which is why the call of the gospel is this. Die to yourself. You no longer live, but as Christ lives in you. But the only people who didn't get to eat this day, was there enough food for everyone to eat? Yes, a lot more than that. So who, in this audience, what attitude would you have to not eat that day? What could you imagine someone saying where they wouldn't have eaten that day? What would they have said to themselves? Yeah, I'm not hungry. I'm not hungry for that. I prefer something else. And those are kind of the two ways that we approach the throne of God. We either go, yes, everything else is cotton candy. Give me more. I want more. Give me the sustenance. I don't care what it costs. I'll give you anything. Just I want a satisfaction of the soul. Give me something deeper. Give me something more meaningful in my life. But the other group of people goes, no, I know what you're pitching, church. I know what you're talking about, Jesus. It's not my flavor. I'm not willing to pay the price that it costs to be satisfied by that. Is there somewhere in your life today where you have substituted the sustenance of God and the mercy He's had for us and our soul for a room full of cotton candy, or a life filled with cotton candy, where you think at some point you're going to eat enough cotton candy where you're going to be satisfied, but it's just not going to happen? Jesus alone is able to call Himself the bread of life. He is what our soul requires. He is what our soul craves. Again, I want the main point of this sermon to be watching the ongoing tension that Jesus created for this people of going, what are you going to do with me? I'm looking up to heaven, man. I said, I'm better than your other prophets. I make better food. It's better than manna. It's better than the dough of the Old Testament Elijah prophets. I'm not guilty of anything. I am the good shepherd. I am the bread of life. I am capable of handing out food for. I am the great provider. The whole audience would have gone, he's saying something more than just feeding people. He's claiming to be equal to God. And we'll watch that tension continue to play out in these weeks that we're going through this series. Let's pray. God, if we found in our life a place where we're chasing something that won't satisfy, the cotton candy of life, a boyfriend, a relationship, a girlfriend, a certain lifestyle, a popularity, success, money, athleticism, being popular, making our name known, being funny, whatever it might be, would we sacrifice all those things for the true bread of life? Not that we have to get rid of all those things, but that you would redeem them. That we would seek popularity not for its own sake, but for the sake of making your name known. That if we are in relationships and we seek those, that we would seek them through the lens of the cross to glorify and to edify you. That if it is fame or it is success, that we would use those things as leverage to make your name known. That is the only life that's going to satisfy. Would you give us the bravery to see those in our life? Would you move your Holy Spirit into our life to reveal what that is for each and every one of us? God, thank you for these students. Thank you for their lives, for their stories. Would you intercede with them that we can all become more like you? In every prayer.